Hi there, I'm Ron Sneller, and I am thrilled that you've joined me here today. Now, before we get started, I would like to take just a moment to commend you for investing the time to watch this video. You're obviously very serious about making the right moves with your money and not procrastinating and making those moves right now. And you know something? You're right to be concerned about what's going on in the financial world. You know, the financial planning industry has been giving you the same cookie cutter advice since the 1980s. But guess what? A lot's changed since Ronnie Reagan left office. The stock market is now highly volatile, and our country is over $25 trillion in debt. Social Security and Medicare, these two big programs that all of this country's retirees rely on, they are underfunded to the tune of tens of trillions of dollars. In fact, they're both projected to become insolvent within the next 10 to 15 years. So what does that mean? That means that future taxes will likely be a huge threat to your retirement. So for the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to get real high level, and I'm going to pull back the curtain on one of the greatest tax advantages that the wealthy utilize that the average person knows nothing about. And we're going to smash some paradigms, and we're going to have fun doing it. In fact, I have never had more fun in my entire career than I am right now, teaching people how to take back control of their money, how to grow their money safely and predictably outside of the volatility of the stock market, and how to build as much wealth as possible off the radar screen of the IRS for income tax purposes. We'll show you how to create consistent, reliable retirement cash flow and how to retire in the 0% tax bracket, where you won't even have to file an income tax return. Now, let's look at the difference. Let's look at the traditional method of planning. You know, we've all been told to max out our 401k and max out our IRA. Well, what does that look like? Well, let's say we're making contributions with this great idea that the government is going to let us use their money for us to make money. We've been told that $10,000 worth of contributions, we've been told that's our money, but it's not. It's not. You want me to prove it? Spend it. Cash it out and spend it. Because if you did that, this is what would happen. If you're in the 20% tax bracket, the first thing that you would do is you'd have to pay $2,000 in income tax. So you'd be left with $8,000, right? Wrong. Because there's a $400 sales charge for the mutual fund fees. And then on top of that, there's a 10% IRS penalty if you withdraw this money before you're 59 and a half. So how much of this money is actually yours? Just $6,600. So in the 20% tax bracket, you'd actually need to have $12,500 to net the $10,000. So this $6,600, that's yours. If you were to invest it at 6%, how long would that take to grow to the $12,500 so you could net the $10,000? 11 years. 11 years. This is a good investment for who? For you? No. This is a good investment for the Internal Revenue Service. You see, you do not need a pre-tax qualified retirement plan to retire. What you need is access to money. And if you're in the higher tax brackets, it's even worse. Let's say, for example, you're in the 37% tax bracket. Instead of having $8,000 left, well, now we have to add $1,700 to our tax burden. So how much is really yours? Just $4,900. Less than half of that $10,000 is actually yours. So who's really in control here? This is not your money. This is a partnership, and it always has been. And if you're okay with that, then great, you're okay with that. But if you're not, well, that's why you're taking the time to watch this video. And that's why I'm spending the time to teach you the truth behind the decisions that you're making with your money. Now, this circle that you see on your screen, this circle represents all of the money that you'll ever have in a lifetime. The money that you'll earn, the money that you'll accumulate, the money that you'll grow to eventually produce an income when you retire. This is called your circle of wealth. Now, for our purposes, let's assume that this circle is actually a pie. I take a knife and I cut into the pie slice. And then I hand you the knife and I say, no, I want you to finish the cut for me. I want that cut to represent how big of a pie slice that you want to voluntarily give the IRS each and every month of your retirement. Or said a different way, if that circle represented your net worth, draw for me how big of a pie slice that you would like to give the Internal Revenue Service on a voluntary basis. 20%, 40%, maybe more than half? Now look, for those people who don't mind paying 30% or 50% or more, God love you. I appreciate you, and we need you. We need to get all of those potholes fixed. And if you want to pay to fix the damn roads, go right ahead. Because when I retire and when my clients retire, we are done. We're done paying income tax because the tax code says that you're responsible for one tax. Any income earned is taxable when the income is earned. But what does Wall Street tell us to do? They tell us to defer part of our earned income to the future. Take the tax deduction right now. That way you can invest even more. Well, that's good for them because they get more money under management and they make more fees off that money. But is it really good for us? So not only will we then be paying income taxes during our working years, we'll be paying income taxes throughout all of our retirement as well. We'll be paying income tax for our whole lives. And haven't we already agreed that taxes are going to be much higher in the future? So why do we do that? Why do we take a relatively small deduction on a relatively small amount of money right now and transfer that money to the future and build up this big pile of money where we have no idea what the tax rates are going to be, but where the government can go after it? Doesn't it make more sense to, number one, pay the taxes right now while we know exactly what they are, and what's more, while they're at historically low levels? Doesn't it make much more sense to do that? Now, here's the interesting thing. This circle and the laws that govern this circle, they're 107 years old. It's called the Internal Revenue Code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take advantage of these laws and restructure your financial life so that you retire on cash flow, not income. Retire on cash flow. Because while income is taxable, cash flow isn't. It never has been and it never will be. So if you could build as much wealth as you wanted and never have to file an income tax return and never have to worry about the government restricting you by age when you could take a distribution or telling you at what age you had to take a distribution, would you want that? Would you want that? If this circle was your net worth, how much of it would you never want to have to pay an income tax on? And it's funny because when people really get it and they understand that it's legal and we're simply utilizing the laws in the tax code, you know what they tell me? I want 100% of my net worth in that circle. I want to do it all. And I say, sorry, you can't, but I do appreciate the sentiment because you need a place to live and you need a car to drive. You need to have furniture to sit on. But everything else, what if you saved $1 million and it were all in that circle? And when you started taking distributions, you didn't have to file an income tax return, regardless of the age when you take your first distribution, or regardless of the amount you take when you take the first distribution. Would you want that? Would you want to take back control of your money? Look, let's have some more fun because it's survey time. Who would you rather be? Retiree number one or retiree number two? Retiree number one has saved $5 million for retirement, and retiree number two has saved $3 million for their retirement. Now, as you look at this question, you're probably thinking, well, this is an obvious, easy answer. So why is he asking me this? Ron, this is a trick question, isn't it? And you'd be right, yeah. When I do my financial analysis with clients, I find that most people tend to have two big assets, their house and a qualified retirement plan. So if retiree number one had that $5 million saved in a qualified retirement plan, it was in a pre-tax IRA, in a managed portfolio of stocks and bonds, that means that following the Monte Carlo rule of using this 4% safe withdrawal rate, that they could receive $200,000 per year in retirement. But that $200,000 per year would be fully taxable. Now, retiree number two, they have $3 million, but they have their money parked in a vehicle that would provide a much more efficient distribution, 6% versus 4%. But on top of that, their distributions would be completely tax exempt. Now, who would you rather be? And so I want to point out what your brain just did. Now you're using logic and newly acquired information to overcome first impressions. And that is so important when we're trying to deprogram our brain from old school thinking or what we've been brainwashed with over and over. But there is more to the story. Let's see how the rest of this calculation plays out. Because with retiree number one, by taking $200,000 of income, it's likely to put them into a pretty high income tax bracket. So let's say they're paying 36% federal income tax, and in the state of Michigan, the state income tax is 4%. So at those levels of income taxation, their net income is just $120,000 per year. But there are hidden costs as well, because with that amount of reportable income, now up to 85% of their Social Security becomes taxable, and there's a possible Medicare premium offset where their government healthcare, their retiree healthcare, where the premiums could get jacked up because they make too much money. They did too well. Now let's look at retiree number two, because with his vehicle, that $180,000 of cash flow is coming to him completely tax exempt. No federal income tax, no state income tax, no local income tax. There's no taxation on the Social Security benefits, and there is no Medicare premium offset. In fact, he is retiring on cash flow, not income, and this cash flow is not reportable. So literally, there is nowhere for these distributions to be filed on an income tax return. And on top of that, you're never going to believe this, but it's true, and I say this literally, retiree number two would qualify for welfare. Food stamps, Obamacare, the government cell phone, all the government cheese. Again, because this is classified as cash flow. You show no income. On paper, he's broke. And so here's my point. If I know going into this, let's say these are two twins. They have the exact same job and the exact same earning power. Retiree number one was able to actually invest a little bit more because they took the tax deduction right now on the IRA. And they obviously got a much, much better rate of return. But let's shatter some paradigms, because true wealth is not about building a huge net worth. True wealth is not about chasing rates of return. It's about the efficiency of the distribution, 6% versus 4%. It's about how that distribution is treated by the tax code and how those distributions affect your government retirement benefits. So true wealth, we're looking at the entire scope of all these different things that come into play. And retiree number two, he could do all of this and he'd have no market risk. He'd have no index that he'd have to follow. He's not paying any hedge fund manager any of these exorbitant fees to manage his money and hope that he does well. And here's another neat thing. He doesn't really care who gets into the Oval Office. And I would also argue that retiree number one, if he had $5 million in 2008, by March of 2009, he'd be down to $2.5 million and he'd try to sue me. So we have covered a lot of information. We're kind of moving into the last stage of education here. If there's one thing that I want you to remember from this entire video, it's this. Where your money is parked is much more important than the rate of return that you earn on it. Again, this is a paradigm shift. So I'll repeat it. Where your money is parked is much more important than the rate of return that you earn. So what exactly are we talking about here? What kind of strategy or program is available to do all of this? You know, we spend a lot of time talking about tax advantages. So maybe some of you are thinking these are Roth accounts, like Roth IRAs. And it's not. It's not. While Roth IRAs can be valuable, they do have some limitations. Number one, you can only contribute up to $6,000 per year. And if you're over 50, they let you throw in an extra $1,000 as a catch-up provision. But good luck trying to build significant wealth on just $7,000 a year of contributions. And the Roth is 100% dependent on the performance of the stock market. So if you have all of your money there and the stock market crashes, guess what? Your retirement just crashed right along with it. And finally, number three, here's another thing. The Roth is tracked and reported to the IRS. And you don't exactly trust the government nowadays, do you? If it's always going to be tax-free, why does it have to be reported? Kind of like Social Security was always going to be tax-free? Okay, so let's get into it. What exactly are we talking about here? What kind of product or program can do all these things and provide all of these benefits that we've discussed? Well, if you're the kind of person who's always been told that when it comes to your life insurance, that you should always buy term and invest the difference, well, you're just going to love this, because what we're talking about is a life insurance policy. Again, we're going against conventional wisdom here. And I'm talking about a specially designed life insurance policy, a policy that is specifically built and structured not to maximize the death benefit, but to generate retirement cash flow. I like to call it life insurance on steroids, okay? But here's the scoop. And this is kind of funny, because when I speak with somebody who follows Dave Ramsey, or up until now, they follow the conventional wisdom of buy term and invest the difference, like their brain, it's at war with each other, because on one hand, they want what it does, but on the other hand, they've been brainwashed into thinking that this is terrible, don't ever buy it. And so I just say this, listen, you want what this does, but you don't like its name. So we're done. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, you say that you like what it does, but you don't like what it's called. So I have to close the appointment now. Let's not waste any more time with each other. And they're like, no, I want to hear more. But look, why life insurance? Why life insurance? Look, if I could use anything else, I would, especially if it had a super cool, super sexy name, like, I don't know, the Whammy Bammy Super Duper Mutual Fund or something. I mean, look, if I could use stocks or bonds or precious metals or coins, or heck, crypto's all the rage now. Hell, if I could even use Coca-Cola cans, I would. Life insurance is the last thing that we would prefer to use. But why do the wealthy use it then? Because of the tax code. The tax code has anointed it as the second coming of the Savior. So let's take a look. In the Internal Revenue Code, which again is 107 years old, there are 5 strategies that the IRS allows you to employ where you aren't required to report a distribution. Those are margin accounts, private mortgages, commercial mortgages, reverse mortgages, and finally, life insurance. And there are 6 places in the IRS tax code that use the word exempt, where the distributions have nowhere to be placed on an income tax return. And all 6 refer to life insurance. In fact, best-selling author and CPA Ed Slott says that life insurance is the single greatest advantage in all of the U.S. tax code. Now look, I get it. For the longest time, I had always believed that cash value life insurance, whole life insurance, I believed it was a terrible asset. That's what I was always told. But then as I gained valuable industry experience and I talked to seasoned advisors and I saw what they were doing with their more financially savvy clients and with their wealthier clients, they were all utilizing huge amounts of cash value life insurance. And so I learned the truth. And I'm going to turn around and I'm going to ask that truth to you. If life insurance is truly such a terrible asset, why do large corporations fund their executive bonus plans with what is called COLI, C-O-L-I, COLI, that stands for corporate owned life insurance? Why are the big banks the largest purchasers of cash value life insurance? Many banks own billions of cash value and hold it on their balance sheets as a tier 1 asset. Citibank, you see it on your screen, over $5 billion of cash value life insurance. And by the way, as an aside, I don't have any special inside connections at Citibank or any other banks. This information is simply public record. Anybody can access it. Go take a look. But Citibank, $5 billion. JP Morgan Chase, $11 billion. Wells Fargo, nearly $19 billion. Bank of America, $22 billion of cash value life insurance. So we have corporate-owned life insurance, bank-owned life insurance, and you know something else? Over 20% of all cash value life insurance assets in this country are owned by the top wealthiest 1%. So what do these wealthy people and large entities know that the average person doesn't? Because they have learned that no matter how much they contribute to a life insurance contract, no matter how much it is, they can grow their money safely and predictably. And when they take distributions, those distributions are completely income tax exempt because they're utilizing the laws within the tax code. And as an additional benefit, their family is also protected during their working years as well, which is a benefit to them. And life insurance also functions as a fantastic wealth transfer tool at the end of life. Now, I get it. Many of you watching this aren't able to contribute $100,000 a year like the wealthier clientele. but I've never understood why the middle class just keeps following the same outdated methods that have never worked for them in the first place. Like maybe if they just keep doing it, one day it will just magically work and they'll become financially free one day. Isn't that the definition of insanity? Doesn't it make more sense to model the habits of the wealthy and apply their strategies to where we're at in our financial lives? Now, maybe you're not contributing $100,000 a year. Maybe you're starting with $5,000 a year or $10,000 a year, and you bump it up to $20,000 per year. But what you're doing is setting yourself up for a wonderful retirement where you can retire in the 0% tax bracket. And we're speaking of all of this in terms of today's tax rates. But we've already agreed that taxes have to go up in the future due to our country's fiscal mess, the underfunded pension programs, all of the debt, the underfunded entitlement programs. Can you imagine how much more beneficial this strategy will be if we revert to some of the higher tax brackets from the past? Heck, the year I was born, 1980, the three top tax brackets were 50%, 60%, and 70%. So if something like that happens, you'll just end up that much further ahead by retiring in the 0% tax bracket. So what if we can ditch the 401k? What if we can give you back control without spending any additional money and simply repositioning what you already have? What if we could show you how to do it by simply moving money from your left pocket over to your right pocket? Would that be valuable information to know? If you want to see what this looks like for you, click the link below and we'll schedule some time on my calendar to talk. We can meet at my office or we can do a Zoom conference. There's no obligation and the first meeting's completely complimentary. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I cannot wait to show you how this would fit into your financial life and how you can take back control of your wealth to build outside of the volatility of the stock market and completely off the radar screen of the IRS for income tax purposes. I look forward to speaking with you.